Thank you, Chairman. The live stream is now live. The meeting over to you.
Thank you very much, Lynn. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this virtual meeting of the Cornwall Local Pension Board. For members of the public watching today, I'm Mark Spilsbury, and I'm the chair of the board. Before consideration of today's business, I will outline the protocols for the meeting, which is being live streamed to the public via Microsoft Teams and is also being recorded. When board members are speaking, they may choose to use their video. If the council's live stream fails during the meeting, which is not expected, and we cannot share the proceedings, I will adjourn the meeting so that access can be restored. If the issue cannot be resolved, I will halt the meeting and the remaining business will be concluded at a future date. If a board member experiences a technical issue, I will adjourn the meeting for a short period of time while efforts are made to try to re-establish the connection. Can I ask the board members who wish to speak on an item or propose or second a motion to indicate by placing an X in the chat box, which I will be monitoring during the meeting. As I call board members to speak, I will remind you to switch on your microphone if necessary. If for some reason you cannot be heard, the Democratic officer will advise you. Where appropriate, the vote will be taken by roll call and the result will be announced by the Democratic officer. When we reach the confidential matters on the agenda, the press and public will be excluded from the meeting, hence the live stream will cease. At this point, board members will be required in turn to confirm and declare that there are no other persons present who are not entitled to either hear or see consideration of the matter. Where a board member has declared a non-registrable interest, a disclosable pecuniary interest, or an interest by virtue of any trade union membership in a matter, they must leave the virtual meeting. Their departure will be confirmed and they will be invited to rejoin the meeting at an appropriate time. Finally, to confirm again, the procedure for today's meeting is that board members who wish to speak should indicate by placing an X in the chat box, and voting will be by roll call. Okay, before we start today's business, the Democratic officer will ask board members to confirm that they are present and to state their role at the meeting, i.e. chairman, employee representative or employer representative. So I will now pass over to Lynn Beardsmore, the Democratic officer.
Thank you, Chairman. Lynn Beardsmore, Democratic officer. I'll now call your name. Please can board members confirm your name and your role on the board? Starting with the chairman, Mark Spilsbury.
Yes, Mark Spilsbury, chairman of the Local Pension Board.
Katie Dalsgaard.
Hi everybody, Katie Dalsgaard, employee representative.
Peter Rugg.
Peter Rugg's the employee representative.
Thank you. Ian Smart.
Good morning, Ian Smart, employer representative.
Thank you. And Amanda Troll.
Good morning, Amanda Trowell, employee representative.
Thank you. And I can confirm the following officers are also in attendance. For the pensions team, Matt Allen, employer liaison officer. Matt Davies, assistant pensions benefits manager. Sean Johns, pension investments manager. And Melissa Kelly, pension fund accountant. And for Democratic Services, it's myself, Lynn Beardsmore, as Democratic officer. That's the roll call completed, Chairman. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Lynn. So we'll start the agenda with agenda item 1, which is apologies for absence. Lynn, can you confirm our apologies?
Lynn Beardsmore, Democratic Services. Nigel Carr and Emma Coombe have given apologies, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Item 2, declarations of interest. Does any member of the board wish to make any new declarations to this meeting? No one's indicated, so I take it there are no new declarations. Moving on to agenda item 3, which are the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 21st of August 2020. The recommendation for this item is that the minutes of the meeting of the Cornwall Pension Fund Local Pension Board held on the 21st of August 2020 were correctly recorded and that they may be signed by the chairman. Could a member of the board please put an X in the chat box if you wish to propose or second these minutes? Thank you. The minutes are proposed by Amanda Troll. Can I have a seconder, please?
I think Chairman Ian Smart has
Thank you.
seconded.
Thank you, and seconded by Ian Smart.
Okay, the roll call is Katie Dalsgaard, for, against or abstain.
4.
Peter Rugg, for, against or abstain. Thank you, Peter. Ian Smart, for, against or abstain.
4.
Mark Spilsbury.
4.
Amanda Troll. Amanda Troll.
Sorry, 4.
Thank you. That's unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you very much. So moving on now to agenda item 4, the Cornwall Pension Fund Local Pension Board Business Update. And I will pass over to Matt Davis, the Assistant Pensions Benefits Manager, to present this paper. So over to you, Matt.
Okay, thank you, Mark. It's quite brief this time, to be honest, but I am going through the normal topics, some updates on some projects, our key performance indicators, work plan update, a brief update about member self-service, and then any other business. There will be some items that we go through in part 2 as well for the administration team. Starting off with the Southwest Area Pension Officers Group, we've had 2 meetings now since the last board meeting. Unfortunately, the minutes of both meetings are not yet available, so I haven't actually been able to provide an update to the board. However, everything we did discuss at those meetings will come up, I should think, at some point during this meeting. The GMP reconciliation, that project, understandably really in the current climate, has pretty much been put on hold. We're still waiting for HMRC to give us a final cut of scheme data to check that the reconciliation's been completed, but HMRC haven't provided that to us yet, and that's understandable really. The team KPIs, there are a couple of movements in here I'd like just to point out. The main one being deaths that the team have been dealing with. We have seen a marked increase in the number of death cases that the team have been dealing with, however not as large as the statistics are showing. It's showing on here that we've done 91 in the last quarter compared to 12 in the previous quarter. That's actually resulted in clearing some old tasks. There were some tasks left on the system during the previous quarter that we didn't complete, just purely, I'm afraid, that the workload was such that the work was done, but the background KPI work wasn't completed, so that skewed the processes a little bit. Divorce cases is correct. We have just seen a marked increase in the number of divorce quotes that were being asked for at the moment, which is probably sadly an indication of the current climate.
Thank you, Matt. So I assume that's the reason for the impact on the performance figure for the deaths as shown.
It is, yes, because they were in last quarter. Obviously, they've been completed now, but that shows that they've been completed outside of target.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions at all on the KPIs?
Does anybody have any questions? If so, please indicate on KPIs. No, I don't think so.
Okay. The next thing on the agenda is the work plan update. The only item that the administration team, benefits team, was due to complete in the last quarter was a review of the data quality for employers. Now that's normally completed after the annual benefit statements have gone out. Unfortunately, we haven't had time to do that this year, and the benefit statements have only just been sent, so we'll have to push that forward to the next meeting, I'm afraid.
I think that's totally understandable. It will be ready for the next meeting, will it?
Yeah, we'll do it by next meeting. Yeah, we can review that.
Thank you.
Member self-service. Again, not much progress, I'm afraid, due to trying to maintain business as usual. It's definitely something that we really need to find a resource to do, and it is high on the agenda because it is going to help the team out significantly. Hoping to start looking at this early part of next year, really, to try and get it done before we start getting busy again in March and April. The next step is to have training for the team so that we're able to set this up, and then we can start rolling it out to small employers and employees that request it, just to test it. Next item is this year's annual benefit statements. Now, as we confirmed in the last meeting, unfortunately, we were unable to hit the statutory deadline of 31st of August this year for these, and we have informed the pension regulator of this fact. Can now confirm that the statements have been issued for all members, all active and deferred, and they were posted on the 19th of October. That's had a significant impact on the team over the last quarter, as you can imagine, with the number of queries that we've then received. And we have informed the regulator on the 21st of October that they have been dispatched. Thankfully, the regulator has confirmed that there's going to be no action or penalties as a result of this breach. Any questions at all? Okay. The next major activity for the team. Oh, has Amanda got a question there?
Only to raise my concern on the accuracy of the benefit statements.
Okay.
We've had a number of issues. We are a very large employer, I will accept that, but we've had, 4 or 5 issues where the 50-50 split in the year hasn't been correctly noted on the benefit statements.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm aware of that.
And Matt is aware of that.
Yeah, we've had an issue with the data load for your employer. After we had that individual contact us, we did correct their statement, and then we did check all the rest of your employees to see if their 50-50 pay had loaded, and it hadn't. So we are issuing revised statements to all of the affected employees by the end of the week.
That's great, thank you, Matt.
I think there were 6, Amanda.
Yeah.
6. The 50-50 pay isn't loaded automatically during the process. It's something that we have to do manually, and unfortunately this year, due to personnel changes, we didn't have the experience completing the year-end process, so it wasn't actually loaded to those records, so we have corrected that.
Okay, just maybe it might be an idea to look at other employers as well as us.
Yeah, we're doing that, Amanda.
Okay, lovely, thank you.
Have you found the same problem with other employers?
No.
No, okay.
No. So the next item, as I say, was the annual allowance pension saving statements. Annual allowance is the limit that HMRC impose on how much pension savings can increase during a year. The current limit's 40,000. Now, for the defined benefit scheme, that's measured by the increase in the value of the benefits over the year. So we have to work out the increase in pension and capitalise that, and then add to that the increase in the value of the lump sum. We test that for every member of the scheme against the limit of 40,000, and if anybody exceeds that limit, we have to provide them with a pension saving statement by the 6th of October. We did meet that deadline, and all the statements that were required to be dispatched to scheme members were sent. This year, that was 10 scheme members who exceeded the annual allowance in this pension input period, and they didn't have sufficient carry forward to negate a tax charge. Now, if you exceed the annual allowance in any year, you're allowed to carry forward unused allowances from the previous 3 years, which can reduce or possibly even fully negate the tax charge. As I say, 10 of these our scheme members didn't have sufficient carry forward, so they've been given a statement and confirmation of the tax charge that they have to pay in line with the growth in their pension benefits. Last year there was 8, So there are more in that position this year. We also wrote to one scheme member who was subject to the tapered annual allowance. Now, the tapered annual allowance is an additional complication for high earners, and if they earn over a particular limit, then their annual allowance is actually decreased from 40,000, and it can go down as low as 10. We had one individual in that position this year, and we wrote to 2 in that position last year. And the final group are those that exceed the annual allowance but have sufficient carry forward to fully negate a tax charge. We had to write to 35 people this year who were in that position, and last year that was 25. So the main ones really are those 10 at the top there, which will have a tax charge that they'll have to pay. They've been informed of the process, and they're required to either make that payment or to inform us that they want the scheme to pay it for them, and they have until the 31st of January to put that information on their self-assessment return.
Can I ask a question on that, Matt? Can you just briefly outline the scheme pays option? I assume there's no cost to the fund in relation to that.
No, it's actuarially neutral. So if anyone opts for that, their tax charge has to exceed £2,000 to be able to do that. But if they are eligible for scheme pays, then we make the tax payment for them to HMRC, and then we reduce their pension by an annual amount, which is a reduction from the day that it comes into payment to the day that they die.
Okay, fine. And if a member doesn't elect to have the scheme pays option, can I just check that there's no requirement for the fund to check that they're dealing with the tax arrangements?
Correct. Yeah, correct. Yeah. So pretty much if they pay it themselves, once we've sent them the pension savings statement, that's the end of our involvement.
Yeah.
We have to put it on the event report. So we complete a HMRC event report every year, and we have to report all breaches, whether they've got a tax charge or not. So we do report them to HMRC. That's the end of our involvement then.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions to Matt on annual allowances?
I think Amanda's got one. Oh, is that your hand up?
Amanda, is that your hand from the previous one? Yes.
Yeah, sorry, I've put that down now.
No, thank you.
Okay.
No, that's fine. Absolutely, carry on then, Matt. Thank you.
Okay, lovely. So COVID-19, the team is still working in the same way as we were at the last meeting, really. We have the majority of the team at home. We've got skeleton staff of around 9 in the office every day, just to try and minimise the impact on the team due to collecting the post, sending the post, taking phone calls. And that seems to be working quite well at the moment. We are still maintaining the government guidance of focusing on paying existing and new retirements and bereavement payments. So estimates are taking a bit of a back seat. Same with transfers, really. We're trying to keep up with everything, but definitely focusing on what the government have advised us to. We had the deadline of next Monday to provide GAD with the 2020 valuation data. The deadline was in October, but GAD extended that to the 23rd of November, and we actually sent that information yesterday, so we have hit that deadline.
Excellent.
The cloud system is now, obviously this is the council's new payroll system, which we use extensively. At the time of the last meeting, we did still have some outstanding issues, and I'm afraid that's still the case. Some of them are not really suitable to explain in this part, so we'll bring them up in part 2. The council and the Oracle team are still working to try and resolve these, but yeah, we are definitely still having problems, and at the moment it's having, I would say, a more significant impact on the team's productivity than anything else. The exit cap, Julie's pretty much stolen my thunder really with the training, because I wrote this obviously before a lot of this had changed. The exit cap has come in on the 4th of November. It is an amendment to regulation that's going to affect benefits that's payable from the LGPS. The LGPS benefits are, LGPS regulations, sorry, still haven't been changed. So there is a conflict, which is quite difficult for us to deal with at the moment when we are taking our own legal advice as to how we should proceed whilst the two sets of regulations are at conflict. Any questions?
Okay, thank you. I think we've got a question from Ian. Ian, I think is typed.
Yeah, and Katie's raised her hand as well, I think.
Yes, yes. Ian first, please.
Sorry, just having a switch screens. Yeah, just Matt, regarding the obviously the uncertainty as to what's happening. Because obviously we've got you're saying about the legal uncertainty and potential implications with that. Is that something that we need to add to the risk register just until such times there's greater clarity?
That's been put on the risk register for the next pensions committee.
It's not on the one we've got in the pack, is it?
No, because this is the one in the packs from the last pensions committee meeting.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Katie.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Matt. That's really helpful update. Just a question in terms of the exit cap. Obviously, there's a voluntary redundancy process happening at the moment within Cornwall Council. Do we, as yet, have a sense of how many of that group of employees that will be impacted by the exit cap?
Yeah, we do, and that was why I was thinking we'd probably do this in part 2.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, that's it for my update.
Yeah, just to confirm, under agenda item 10, there will be another opportunity to discuss both Oracle and the exit cap.
Yeah.
Thank you, Matt. Do we have any other questions, any at all before we do the recommendation? No? Okay, we'll move to the recommendation, which is that members of the board note the update provided within this business update report and seek from officers such clarifications or further assurance that they require. Can I please have a proposer and a seconder? I think that's Katie proposing. Can I have a seconder? Katie Dalsgaard proposed. A seconder, please.
I think Ian has seconded, Chairman.
And Ian
Put an X in the chat box.
So the democratic officer will now conduct the roll.
Thank you, Chairman.
So I've got, the recommendation is proposed by Katie Dalsgaard and seconded by Ian Smart. Lynn, if we could go to the vote, please.
Thank you, Lynn Beards, More Democratic Services. Katie, for, against or abstain?
For.
Peter, for, against or abstain? Thank you, Peter. Ian, for, against or abstain?
For.
Thank you. Mark, for, against or abstain?
For.
Thank you. Amanda, for, against or abstain?
For.
Thank you. That's unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you very much. We now move on to agenda item 5, the Cornwall Pension Fund Local Pension Board Member Training Update. And I'll now pass over to Matt Allen, the Employer Liaison Officer, to present this report. So,
thanks, Mark. So if we can all just, if you've got our papers in front of you, could I ask you just to turn, if you can, so I think it's page 28 and 29. This is just to remind you all really regarding the training. Obviously, you have to maintain the training credits, and the training credits are 25 over a 2-year rolling period. So the 2-year rolling period, as it suggests, is a rolling period. So obviously what will happen is you'll have if you're a longer serving member of the board, you'll start to see some credits drop off as you reach beyond the 2 years as you go through. So just to demonstrate that, and I don't mean to pick on Ian on this one, but if you look at Ian, because he's near the top of the list, you'll see that he's got 19 active credits and he's had 5 lapsed. So what that means is he's gone beyond the 2 years. So some of those courses that he originally did have now lapsed, which means he's gone down in the points now to 19. Similarly, the same sort of thing has happened to Nigel, who's obviously not here today, and obviously Peter as well. So that would tie in with those 3 being the longest serving members of the board. The newer members, as you will see looking down the table, you'll see the likes of Emma, Katie, Amanda, have all got lower points, and that's the reason because they've only just started on the board, and as they're going to progress through the 2 years, obviously those credits will go up. So I wouldn't be overly concerned at this stage that maybe you're shown as a red, if you're in those red banded, certainly the new people, because you are going to hopefully achieve those training credits within the next 2 years. What I would say is obviously the training that we've had before, prior to this local pension board, that will be taken into account on the next report, so that will be counted. And obviously, since the report was written, I think back in middle of October, you may have done some more training which may not have shown here as well. So this is as current as the report is. What I would say is for the ones that are lapsing, maybe the board members, newer board members who haven't done it yet, have a look at the trustee toolkit. So I know looking at Ian's list and Nigel's list, they're ones that they've lost on the trustee toolkit. So you can redo those at any time. And obviously, hopefully you all received an email from me yesterday mentioning about the new trustee toolkit module for pension scams that's literally just been released this week. So if you get a moment between now and obviously the next meeting, if you can complete that one, that'll obviously give you another credit or so for those. And really my sort of feedback on it is I think everyone's where I would expect them to be at this stage. However, you can get some easy wins if you haven't already done so. Like I said about the trustee toolkit, they are relatively easy. Spend an hour, do one module, and then obviously just let me know once you've done those. But all in all, I think overall I'm pretty pleased with where everyone's standing. And obviously, Mark, as the new chairperson, you've gone from, I think you highlighted this last time, that you'll build up your credits, and like you said, you've gone shooting up now to 17, which is also good. I don't want to leave you out of the taking credit for those as well. So all in all, pretty pleased with this, but obviously just be mindful if you're a longer member of staff on the board member, just be mindful that you are going to see credits disappearing. That's all I'm going to say. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Matt. Okay, I think you have a question. No? Does any board member have any questions for Matt on this report? I have to say, I think this is a very thorough way of monitoring the training, so I think that's very positive. But does any member of the board have any questions or any comment? Okay, nobody's indicating, so we'll go straight to the recommendation, which is that members of the Cornwall Pension Fund Local Pension Board note the update provided within this report. And again, he's going to have something to propose. Well, I'll propose that recommendation. Could I have a seconder, please? Is there anybody to second that recommendation?
Hi, Mark. I
second
think we've all
Katie,
done it.
thank you for that. Katie, oh, happy. It doesn't pop up on mine. It might be easier to use the raise a hand function, which is easier to pick up. So we'll go with that one as proposed by Katie and seconded by Amanda. Lynn, could we go to the roll call, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Lynn Beardsmore, Democratic Services. Katie, for, against or abstain, please.
4.
Peter, for, against or abstain. Thank you, Peter. Ian, for, against or abstain?
4.
Mark, for, against or abstain?
4.
And Amanda, for, against or abstain?
4.
Thank you. That's unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Moving on now to agenda item 6, the Cornwall Pension Fund Local Pension Board Governance Update. And I now ask Sean Johns, the Pension Investment Manager, to present this report. So over to you, Sean.
Hi, thanks, Mark. I'll just give a very quick high-level overview, and then if anyone's got any questions on the agenda items, then please feel free to give me a shout. There's three main items, really. The first one is the risk register. As you can see from the pack, there were no updates. However, as Matt Davis has already pointed out, there's been a new one which was recently added for the exit cap, which will filter through to the committee meeting in December. There's the Pensions Committee Work Plan Mid-Year Review, which we take every 6 months just as a form of good governance. There's nothing in there that I think it's worth highlighting. And the other point in the paper really is just the Hyman's cash flow forecast. And as you'll be able to see from that, the baseline point at which the fund is envisaged to go cash flow negative at the minute is 2026, excluding investment income. When you factor that in, it's actually cash flow positive for the whole 20-year period. We did this projection until 2039. Obviously, the projections at this point in time, and it will likely change depending on situations in the future. But at the minute, it poses no immediate concern. And that's all I really wanted to highlight at the minute.
Okay, thank you, Sean. Could members of the board indicate if you've got any questions or comments you want to raise with Sean? I think Ian's got a question, have you? Ian, did you have a question?
Yes, I have. Just a few queries with the risk register, Sean. Just the first one, ANC 1, with the breach of data under the likelihood for that, with the minimum staffing that's in County Hall at the moment, should the likelihood of that be reduced?
I mean, I'll pass over to Matt on that one, seeing as it's admin team related, if that's all right,
Yeah.
Matt.
It probably could, Ian. We do have a slightly more additional risk in that there's more people working from home. So you've got different risks now, rather than it just being people on the same floor as us. But yeah, potentially it probably is something that we could look at.
Thank you. Just moving on, F&I 4, fund assets do not meet obligations, liabilities. With that one there, and obviously based on the current climate, is that something which, obviously with the uncertainty of what's happening, is that now a higher risk than what's shown?
No, if I'm honest, Ian, at the minute, the fund investments are higher than they've ever been, at about 2.13 billion. And I'll give a little bit more of an update on this in the actual investment strategy update bit, but the funds actually improved to 96.3% funded at the end of September. And I'll explain more the methodology then as to why that's increased.
Okay, that's great. So moving on to F&I 9, recession in developed markets. Again, is that accurate, what's showing in the risk register?
Yeah, I think the thing is, as you'll be aware, we implemented a risk management framework at the end of June. So now what we have in place is a level of equity protection. So, if the equity markets crash, actually with this insurance we've got in place, we won't experience that anywhere near as bad as we do. I mean, I take the point that, with how things are going with COVID, and we've seen it a bit more today, that people in the investment markets are actually starting to take these increased cases a bit more seriously, and markets have gone down a bit today. I think the thing is we do have a diverse range of investments, some of which are in the more liquid private markets, which aren't subject to the same more daily valuation movements. And as I said, we've got the equity protection in place, which again is a bit of a diversifier. So I think all in all, I think where it is at the minute, we're comfortable with.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. And last one is just on Gov 1, the transition and management of assets by Brunel. That's showing in terms of risk rating really high, but obviously that process is something that's been ongoing for some time. I'm not quite sure what the risk, why it's showing red. What is the perceived risk which is making it red? And also, obviously, I know in terms of what's put in place to mitigate that, should it still be as high as it is?
Yeah, I think the thing is with these investment transitions, very complicated transitions, because they're not just including one client at a time. It's several of Brunel funds transitioning, very high sums of money, usually circa $1 billion plus at the same time. So I think, despite the mitigations we have in place, which is using, a very well experienced transition manager such as Macquarie, is like a very large company, I think there's always going to be a lot of risks involved. So I think it's right that it does stay at that level of risk. I think where we are in terms of the transition, when we get to around June next year, I expect that to pretty much disappear off the risk register, because we should by then have transitioned, all of the assets.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ian.
Thanks, Ian.
Any other questions from members of the board on any points in relation to this paper? Can I just ask one then, Sean? I know it's not very likely, but if the fund did go cash flow negative at any time in the future, what changes, if any, might the fund implement to address that issue?
Yeah, I think the main way of us tweaking it is through the investment strategy. So, we could look at investing in assets which generate more investment income. We implemented a new process this year. So what we'll be doing is we'll be reviewing every year a kind of a desktop review of the investment strategy and the liabilities. So with Mercer and Hyman's respectively. So this way we're actually, having a more focused look on it every March, just to make sure that things aren't moving in that direction. And if they are, we've got plenty of time to react to it.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much for that. Any other questions? No, in that case, we'll move to the recommendation on this, which is that the Pension Board notes the government update and requests such clarifications and further information from officers as may be required. Could somebody indicate to propose and second that recommendation, please?
Peter Rugg has proposed, Ian Smart has seconded.
Thank you very much. Could we go to the roll call vote then, Lynn, please?
Yes, Lynn Beardsmore, Democratic Officer. Katie, for, against or abstain?
For.
Peter? Thank you. Ian?
For.
Mark?
For.
And Amanda?
For.
Thank you. That is unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you very much. So we now move on to agenda item 7, which are items from the Pension Committee meeting on the 17th of September 2020. As board members are clearly all aware, the complete set of Pension Committee papers is sent to you all in advance of each Pension Committee meeting. This being the case, as agreed by the board, rather than having the full set coming back to the meeting of the board, as it used to be the case, in order to keep the level of papers and the papers pack to a manageable length, I now agree with officers which items to board and which items should have links in the board papers but don't have the actual papers attached. These papers really are submitted to the board largely for information, but also to allow questions to be raised. The point of this is to provide assurance to the board that the committee is being provided with robust and timely information on which to make decisions. On this occasion, the reports that are provided to the board are the Investments Update Part 1, the Brunel Responsible Investment Update, and the draft minutes from the Pension Committee meeting on the 17th of September. Firstly, Sean, do you and Matt, do you either of you wish to highlight any key issues from these reports?
Yeah, there's a couple of quick bits that I want to go through. I don't know if you've got any bits, Matt.
Not really. I'm just happy to take questions on anything from the admin update. So it's over to Sean, really.
Okay, so if you could give an update, Sean, on the key issues, and then we'll take questions from board members on any of the issues.
Yeah, sure thing. If I could just turn everybody to page 101, please. I think it may be a little bit easier to see it visually. And I'll just do a brief verbal update on the rest of it while you're finding that page. I mean, at this paper, we've got the valuation at the end of June. and you can see, looking at this, that the 31st of March liability value was just over 2 billion, and at the end of June it increased by 14.3% to just under 2.3 billion. Now, the reason for this and such a stark movement over the quarter, the way this figure is calculated is through our actuary. And what they do is they use the assumptions at the previous valuation, which was the 2019 valuation. And what they flex is the discount rate, and then they flex it for salary increases and CPI. And this is the changes over the quarter. So for the discount rate, it kind of falls largely in line with what investment expectations were. So when we were doing the valuation, we took a probability of a 70% likelihood of the fund meeting its 4.1% investment return per annum target. So one of the things which has largely impacted this figure is that actually Hymans thought there was a lower chance we would hit the 4.1% target. They thought there was a 70% chance we'd actually achieve a lower return. So because the discount rate was lower, then the math follows that the actual value of the liabilities will be higher. And the other change was their prediction for salary increases and CPI, which has an impact on it as well. Looking at a more recent update, this has actually increased now. So as you would, the liability values decreased as you would expect with how investment markets have gone, and the fund at the end of September was just over 2.1 billion. But with the additional confidence in the markets, the actual certainty of hitting that 4.1% from Hymans has increased. So because of that, the liability value has dropped. I appreciate it's quite technical, but I hope that's clear as to the methodology behind it. And as I say, all the other assumptions are the same as at the valuation. And that really was the main point I wanted to touch on. So I'll leave it for any questions or points on the rest of the report, which I'll take as read.
Thank you for that, Sean. I think that background and context is very, very important, because just looking at those figures, it does look quite stark without what you've just said, which is just changing forecast, basically, isn't it, of the actuaries' forecasts. But thank you for that. I think I've got an indication from Peter and then from Ian to either ask a question or make a comment. So Peter first, please.
I'm not sure if they were hands left up for voting or not.
Were they? Okay. Has any member of the board then got? Oh, Ian, I think Ian's indicating.
Yeah, no, I had no question either. So when I push the hand, am I supposed to push it again to take it off?
Yes, yeah. Yes, Ian.
There we go. Apologies for that.
Okay, no problem. I think the one point I would like to highlight with regard to this report, which I found was a very positive point, is on page 107, which it gives the investment returns for the fund compared with the universe average for all funds. And if you look at the 3-year return on that page, the Cornwall return annualized was 2.9%. Return compared with the universe average of 1.9%. Only that's a 1% difference. Now, it doesn't sound, huge, but it is absolutely massive in terms of financial impacts. When you're talking such big numbers, with £2 billion invested, 1% makes a huge difference. So I think that is a very, very positive figure, and I think it's worth highlighting that.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay, so if there are no other questions, we'll go straight to the recommendation, which is the board notes the minutes, items and associated recommendations approved by the Pensions Committee from the public part of the Pension Committee meeting held on the 17th of September 2020. I'll propose those minutes, I'll propose that recommendation if I can have a seconder, please. I can't see anything again. I've got
Ian has seconded.
Yes, thank you. That's proposed by myself and seconded by Ian. So could we go to the roll call vote, Lynn, please?
Yes, Lynn Beardsmore Democratic Services. Katie, for, against or abstain?
For.
Peter. Thank you. Ian.
4.
Thank you. Mark.
4.
Thank you. Amanda.
4.
Thank you. That's unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Moving on to agenda item 8, any business the chairman considers to be urgent, and I confirm that there are no urgent items. We now move on to agenda item 9, which is exclusion of the press and public. Under this item, it is proposed that under section 100A4 of the Local Government Act 1972, as amended, the public be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business on the grounds that it involves a likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of part 1 of schedule 12A of the Act, namely information relating to the financial or business affairs of any particular person, including the authority holding that information, and that proceedings apart from the resolution passed shall remain confidential. Could I please have a proposer and a seconder for that motion? I got Katie proposed and Amanda seconded. So could we go to the roll count, Lynn, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Lynn Beardsmore Democratic Services. Katie. 4 against or abstain.
4.
Peter. Thank you, Peter. Ian.
4.
Mark.
4.
Amanda.
4.
That is unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you, Lynn. I think if we could have the live stream stopped now, and I think we have to wait for a couple of minutes for that to be achieved.
That's correct, Chairman. Thank you. I will